Boker Tov, today's daf is Daf Samach Zayin in Yevmot. This we learned for four Shlem for Yosef Israel ben Chaim Michal and Elazar ben Reuma. It's from the Mishnah. Bas Yisrael Shenisis L'Kohen. Now, last week's parsha we learned the following rules. We know the Kohen eats truma. Kohen's family eats truma. His wife, his children, his slaves, his avodim k'nanim, and his nichsei maluk also that she brought in because they can eat nichsei maluk with avodim who are nichsei maluk that she had written into the ksuba. She had slaves and she had slaves who were written into the ksuba. Those are tzon barzo. If she didn't write into ksuba, it's nichsei maluk, but they can eat because of her. So Kohen's wife, his children, anybody that they acquire, anybody that his wife or his children acquire, they can eat. Even if the slaves acquire slaves, they can all eat. However, regular Yisraelim cannot eat truma. So the last week's parsha we learned that if a Bas Yisrael, a girl who's from a Yisrael family, not a Kohen family, marries a Kohen, she can eat, right? Okay. And let's say he dies. Can she still eat? If there were children, even grandchildren, any survivors that they have from that union, she can continue to eat truma. She can continue to eat truma because of her husband, even though he's deceased, and even though her children might be gone, or her grandchildren, if she has a great-grandchild from there, even if the kid's a mamzer, she can eat truma because of that. Okay. What about the other way? What about if it's a Bas Kohen who eats truma in her family's house, and now she marries a Yisrael? She can no longer eat truma because she's married to Yisrael. Let's say he dies, and there were no children, there's no surviving children, then she can go back and eat truma in her father's house. But if she had a child from Yisrael, or even a grandchild or great-grandchild, she cannot eat truma anymore because she's connected to the Yisrael now. That's what we learned. Those are the psukim in last week's parsha. So what about this case here? So what about if it's not sure if she has children or not, or besides having children, she also is pregnant? What do you do then? Complicated cases. So Bas Yisrael Shenisis L'Kohen. Bas Yisrael married to a Kohen Mason, he died. Okay. While she's married, she can eat truma. V'inicha muberes, and he left her pregnant. And at this point, this part of the Mishnah speaking about, she had children, so she could definitely eat truma, right? Because she had children from the Kohen, right? But he left her pregnant. Lo yochlu avadeh b'truma. The avodim who are tzon barzel, the avodim were written into the ksuba. Now they can't eat truma. Why? Why? Because of a technicality. We'll see. This is Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says the following. This says, wait a minute. Sure, she has children. She can eat truma, right? And her nichsei maluk, her own slaves can eat truma, just like she can. But the tzon barzel, who are written into the ksuba and who the husband basically has a share in, his children have a share in it too. And the problem is that the child, the uber, the embryo inside, cannot give truma to anybody. We'll see why. He can't give truma. So because the embryo inside has a share in the slaves, right? And he can't give them truma. Therefore, the nichsei tzon barzel, the Mishnah is saying at this point, cannot eat truma till the kid's born. And then but while he's an embryo, no. So again, v'inicha muberes, even though there were other children too, she can eat because of the other children. The nichsei maluk can eat children. But she's meres lo yochel avadeh b'truma. The avodim, Rashi explains, the avodim tzon barzel cannot eat truma because the chelik of the uber, uber posel v'eino machil de Rabbi Yossi. Because an unborn child deprives from eating truma and cannot give food to eating truma. What do we mean by that? So Rashi here explains like this. So let's say she's a Bas Kohen. She ate truma in her father's house. She's now married. She marries Israel, right? She can't eat truma anymore, right? She can't eat truma anymore. But he dies. Can she go back to her father's house and eat truma? There's no children, but she's pregnant. So the embryo deprives her of the ability to go back and eat in her father's house because maybe he's a Yisrael inside, right? Maybe the embryo is Yisrael. So the uber deprives her from eating if she's a Bas Kohen. And if the other way around, let's say she's a Bas Yisrael married to a Kohen and there were no children, but she's pregnant and he dies now or divorces her, and she's pregnant, could she eat because of the embryo? Who is the embryo whose father is a Kohen? No. As the embryo does two things. It deprives a Bas Kohen of eating in her father's house, and it does not give a Bas Yisrael who is pregnant from the Kohen the ability to eat. Divrei Rabbi Yossi. Those are all Rabbi Yossi's words. And as Rabbi Yossi, we'll see the machlokus in the Gemara, but Rabbi Yossi holds that the embryo inside prevents the avodim or tzon barzel from eating. Now it's clear everybody agrees that if there were, I should take that. Yeah, not everybody agrees. Rabbi Yossi is saying that. Rabbi Yossi is saying that if there were no other children and she's pregnant, then there's no way she can't eat truma. If she's a bas Kohen, she can't eat truma because maybe it's Israel. And if she's a bas Israel, she can't eat truma because her husband, because he can't give her to eat. Why is that? Because the pasuk says v'yalid beiso heim yochlu b'lachmo. Right, that was what it says in the parsha. V'yalid beiso mechamecham. Only yalid kari beyachilu. Only if he's born can he give food to somebody else. And if he's not born, she'eni yalid ein machal. If he's not born yet, he can't give food. So even though her husband was a Kohen and there were no other children, and there was a baby, the baby is going to be a Kohen one way or another. No, baby cannot give each one. We'll see. We'll discuss what. Right. If the Yibber dies, then she goes back to original situation. Correct. The Yibber might die, and then if she's a Bas Kohen and there were no other children, she can go back and eat at her father's house. And if she's a Bas Yisrael married to a Kohen, then she can't eat truma anymore because she has no children from the Kohen. That's what Rabbi Yossi said. That Rabbi Yossi is saying that the Uber has a share in the Avodim, has a share, and he doesn't have the ability to give food, to cause them to eat, to assign them food. That's Rabbi Yossi. Amar lo, so they said to Rabbi Yossi, if you're saying that about Bas Yisrael Kohen, Af Bas Kohen the Kohen also makes the same thing. What happens if a Bas Kohen married to a Kohen? Either way, she should be able to truma. But if you're saying that the Uber doesn't have Uber has a share in it, in the slaves, but doesn't have the ability to give them food, it makes a difference if it's a Bas Yisrael to a Kohen or even a Bas Kohen to a Kohen. Not because the child is not a Kohen yet, in other words, if that's the reason, then even if it's a Bas Kohen married to a Kohen, which you might say either way, she should be able to eat the truma. She'd be able to truma if she's from her father or from her husband. Still, she can't. Why? Because the Uber has a share in that, and since he's not born yet, he can't assign the food, can't allocate food to these slaves. That's what they said to Rabbi Yossi, but we'll see Rabbi Yossi didn't accept that. We're going to discuss it now. What's his reasoning why an unborn child cannot cause them to eat? Is it because that the Uber in the womb of a Zara, Bas Yisrael, meaning a non-Kohen woman, he's a Zar, right? So let's say so even if she had other children who are Kohanim, but this baby inside, until it's born, it's not a Kohen. There's no Kohen inside the mother. While it's in the mother, it's still a Zar. It's not a Kohen, and therefore he can't give food he's not entitled to the truma. He can't give truma to the others, to the slaves. Or there's simply that if he's not born yet, he can't give out food. What happens if the mother was also a Bas Kohen? The mother was a Kohen, the husband was a Kohen. If you say the reason is because a baby in the womb of a Bas Yisrael is, even though the father was a Kohen, but he's not a Kohen yet, the baby's only a Kohen when he's born. And Kozma, he's not born, he's a Zar. Yeah, but if the mother's a Kohen and the father's a Kohen, then the baby's not in the womb of a Zara. He's in the womb of a Kanas. And then you would say that he could give out food. Or do you say no? The reason is because if it's not born, it's not because if the baby is a Kohen or not a Kohen. It's because simply a baby cannot give out food. He's not a Zocha in the food. And as he's Zocha in the slaves because his father owned the slaves or owned the slaves via the Ksuba and then Nechse and Barzo. But he can't give out the food. What's the reason? Rabba says, the reason is because the unborn child in the womb of an Isha Zara, a non-Kohen woman, is considered a Zara. But if the mother was a Kahanis, then this wouldn't apply, because then the baby's a Kohen Marafshach. The baby's in the womb of a Kohen, the Bas Kohen, and the father's a Kohen, and then he could give out food. That's what Rabbi says. Rabbi Yosef says no. The reason is the Yilid Machal Sheni Yilid Ein Machal. If he's not born, he can't give out food. Period. That's the reason. Because it's based on a pasuk. Pasuk is Yilid Beisau Haim Yochel Belachmo, and we read that as Ya'achilu. Only if he's born. If he's not born, he can't give out the food. So that's what the rabbi say. In other words, he has a share in it, right? He has a share in the right. Rashi says over here, I'm trying to feed it very much. Right. In other words, Rabbi Yossi holds that the baby has a share in the slaves, right? He's a share in the slaves, so the slaves are partially his. He has a share in them, like the other kids who were born. And since he has a share in it, even if there are other children yet, they can't eat. That's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. That's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Okay, so that's the shiloh over here. Rabbi Yossi says he could have a share. He has a potential share when he's a share in it because he's a child. Yes, yeah. If somebody acts on his behalf, probably we'll see if an apotropos was assigned, a guardian was assigned to take care of his interest, could take care of his interests. Yeah, that's the. I don't know what the common law is about unborn child when it comes to Yerusha. Man dies and left $1 million, and he's got 2 sons, and he's got a wife who's pregnant. Does the baby also get a share? I would assume. Why not? Why not? If he says I wrote a will, he says I want all my sons to share equally in the Yerusha. The unborn child will get it too. I don't know what the common law is. The lawyers will weigh in on that. But in any case, here according to Rabbi Yossi, he does have a share. Rabbi Yossi says he does have a share, and because he has a share, and he can't give out the food yet, either because Rabba's reasoning because he's not a Kohen. He's not a Kohen until he's born. That's what Rabba said. The other reason is no, but simply the Torah said if he's not born yet, he can't give out the food. That's what we have over here so far. Meisvei, Amar yesterday told Rabbi Yossi Me'achashad to learn all Bas Yisrael. Since you're talking about Bas Yisrael L'Kohen, Bas Kohen L'Kohen now. What about Bas Kohen L'Kohen? And it's sort of like the words in the Mishnah. It's a variation of the dialogue in the Mishnah. What about a Bas Kohen L'Kohen now? Amar Lahem Zu Shamati Zu Lo Shamati. In our Mishnah, we don't have this part of the dialogue, but the Brisa says that Rabbi Yossi said, well, I only heard that it's also, in other words, that the Avdei Tzom Barzil cannot eat in this case where the mother is a Yisrael. Mother's a Israelis, she's a Israelis, and therefore the kids are Zarim, and the baby's a Zar until it's born, and therefore she can't have food. But in a case where she's a Bas Kohen, in other words, the reason is not because Yilid Machel, Sheni Yilid Machel, she's a Bas Kohen, it could work. That's what he answered them. Yeah, but if the reason is because it's a Zar, and this is and if she's the mother's a Bas Kohen, then it's not a Zar. So that's what he says. Makes sense. If she's a Bas Kohen, so that if she's a Bas Israel, so the kid is a Zar until it's born, and that's why he said that the Avdei Tzom Barzil cannot eat in that case. But if the mother was a Bas Kohen, the child is a Kohen either way. Then he could give out food. If the reason is the second reason that Rabbi Yossi said, because if he's not born, he can't give out food. It's the same thing. Makes no difference if an unborn child cannot give out food. Makes no difference if he is a Kohen or Yisrael, can't give out food. So what difference does it make? Why did he say Zushmati with Zushmati? So it's Takakasha. So it's mash from here, like Rabbah, that the reason is because that Uber B'mei Zora is a Zor, and if the mother is Takakabas Kohen, wouldn't be a problem. Right? That's all Rabbi Yossi. I'm Rabbi Shmuel Zuti Rabbi Yossi. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. The Chacham disagree. The Chacham hold like what you said, that an unborn child has no share. When it's born, it'll have a share. But when it's unborn, it has no share. It's not so at all. And therefore, the Chum say like this: if she had children, she had other children, then the Avdei Tzom Barzil can eat because the other children, they have a share in it too. The born children, the born. So the slaves can eat because of the unborn, because of the born children, because the unborn child has no share at all. That's the Chum say. Emo banim. If let's say there were no children at all, the Kohen who died has other relatives. He has no children. He's got brothers, let's say. Okay, so the brothers inherit him, and then the Avadim are belong to the brothers. They inherit. If there's no children, who's the inheritance go to? To his brothers, let's say. So because he has no brothers, somebody in the family, he's got a cousin, somebody who's going to inherit this, some Kohen. It's a family of Kohanim. Some Kohen is going to inherit him. So eat because of them. Mishpacha Kuk is the whole family. Okay, that's so the Chachamim disagree basically with Rabbi Yossi's opinion on the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi says the Uber has a share, and therefore he can't get, and since he can't give out the food, the Avdei Tzom Barzil cannot eat it until the kid's born. And the Rabbanan disagree. So the Gemara says now, analyzing Shmuel said on Shmuel Zuvelo Sfirale. How can you say it sounds like that's what Rabbi Yossi says, that the unborn child has a share in them. But I don't hold that way, apparently. How could you say that? Amar Shmuel, Amalei Shmuel, Rav Chana Bagdatar. Rav Shmuel said to Rav Chana Bagdatar. Rashi says Bagdatar could mean because he's a Balagadata, like Balagadata, or he's from Baghdad. That's usually how we read Bagdatar is from Baghdad. He told them, Puk, go out. I see the best. Go bring me 10 people because I want to say this publicly. The aim of I'm going to tell you about. I'm going to tell in front of them. And I want it publicized. Hamazakala Uberkar. You could be zocha for an Uber. In other words, an Uber could acquire something. You could act. Obviously, he's unborn. He doesn't know what's going on. But you could be mazaka. You could have a zikui for an Uber. So how can you say that Shmuel disagrees? That that's what Rabbi Yossi says. The Chum disagree. Rabbi Yossi also said Uber could be zocha. Elazu is fearless. Means like this is what he says, and I do all that way. So my kamashma the plea Rabban Allah, Rabbi Yossi. You're going to tell me that Rabban disagree with Rabbi Yossi, and they say that the child has no schiyah, cannot acquire anything, and we plead that they argue. From Rav Zakai, Zuei to say Rabbi Yossi, mi pi shmaya v'tayim. Rabbi Yossi said this over in the names of Shmuel. He testified about this names of Shmuel and Atayim early Tanam. V'hodelo, and they agreed with him. Or Vashi Miktani B'Kubla doesn't say they accepted it. V'hodelo, they agreed with him. Tani, the Mustafa Tani, they said, you know what, you have a good logical reason, but it doesn't mean that they agreed with him. It doesn't mean that they changed their opinion. It doesn't mean that they accepted it as the opinion. They just said what you're saying makes sense, but they disagreed. They said that an unborn child has no ownership in the slaves. He does not zocha to anything, whereas Rabbi Yossi says that he does. Now we're going to see more about Rabbi Yossi. Let's say he just left children. He left a man dies. Cohen's married to Yisraelis, right? She can eat. Her slaves can eat. His slaves can eat. No problem. And he died, and he left children. But he left children very simple. She can continue to eat, and the slaves can continue to eat, right? Because he left Cohen children. Elo means, no. No, they have to be his children. They have to be his children. His children. I mean, the children, yeah, but the Elu is going on Nichse Son Barzal and Nichse Malug. Doesn't mean that if she had children with him, if she has children with well, if he just had children, it doesn't affect her at all. She has no children from him. She has to have his seed, otherwise she's not connected. So Yiniach Bonim, if he left over just sons, there were no pregnancies. She just left over some children when he died. Both Nichse and Barzal. And his children, the Nichse and Barzal can eat because of his children, and her Nichse Malug, her of Avdei Malug can eat because of her. So let's say there were no children. All he left was a pregnant woman. Nobody could eat. Why? Nobody could eat. Why? Because she can't eat either. Because what's her ability to eat now? Only because of the child, right? Because she's a Bas Yisrael and he's a Kohen. And he left her on child, but the child is not born yet. So the child can't give her to eat. And therefore his slaves can't eat, her slaves can eat. Nobody could eat. Okay, let's say at the beginning of the Mishnah, we said he left children and he left her over pregnant. So Avdim Lug Ochan, this is like really what they said at the beginning of the Mishnah. Avdim Lug could eat Kedech Shiocheles. She can eat because of them. Why? Because she has children from him. And Avdim Sambaza Lo Yochim Mechalkashu because the Chek Uber Shober Post later Machal de Rabbi Yossi. That's exactly what we saw in the Mishnah. The Uber can deprive a woman of going back to her father's house if she's a Bas Kohen, but he can't cause them to eat. So he has a share in it, Rabbi Yossi. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. Rabbi Shmuel, this is Rabbi Yossi's son. What did he say? Omer Mishimav, he said in his father's name, Habas Machelas Abein Enamachel. Very strange words. The daughter can give them to eat if he left over a daughter, but the son cannot. Now, it's not clear what this means at this point. This is very unclear. Habas Ma'acheles, if you left over a daughter, it costs you a bed in a machel. We don't know what this means yet. We're going to leave it aside. We'll come back to it. That's Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yossi's son, Rabbi Yishmael, said that in the name of his father. Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Choy Omer, he says, listen to this. Zecharim Yechelu. What does that mean? If he left over a live son, he left over a son, then what? Then it's Nechseit Barzal can eat because of the son, right? Because of the son. Left over a son. That means to say, right, if there was a son, they can eat the son. What about the Uber? We're talking now in a case where remember, if the Kohen left over live sons, no problem, but he could eat. If he left over no live sons, if she wasn't pregnant, then that's it. It's over, right? If left over a pregnant son also, a pregnant woman, and we don't, also cannot eat. What happens if he left over both sons and a pregnant woman? Left over sons. So Shimon says if there was a son, they could all eat. They could all eat. All the sons basically. What about the chelik of the uber? What about the chelik of the uber? So we'll see the explanation why they could eat anyway. What we just said, according to Yossi, the uber prevents them from eating because the uber has a share in it too. Okay, but here's the thing: if there was a son who was alive, a live son, the odds are that the uber will not cause any problems. Why? 50%, it's a girl, right? And if it's a girl, she has no share, she has no chelik. When there's a boy and a girl, the son gets the whole thing. There's a small percentage who die before childbirth, right? That miscarry. So if you have a live son, 50, there's a better than even chance that he'll be the only heir, right? And therefore he says, listen, if Shimon says, if there was at least one boy there, then it's why? Because he's going to get the whole thing. There's only a small chance that there'll be a live baby boy born from that pregnancy, so that they ever can eat. Cool in a kavus, but let's say all the children who were left over, that he left over, the man died, and he was survived by girls only, then lo yochlu, then they can't eat. Why? Because maybe it'll be a boy, maybe the baby will be a zor, and they won't have any share in it. And as the baby will have the whole inheritance. So the Gemara says, wait a minute, why do you say because maybe the baby will be a zachar? If they're all girls, maybe the baby will also be a girl. What's the difference? She also has a share. According to Rabbi Yossi, the baby, the unborn child, has a share. If a man dies and left over only girls, the girls all inherit, right? The girls inherit, not his brothers. They inherit, right? And the keva also prevents or deprives the slaves from eating because of her share, according to Rabbi Yossi, regardless of Rabbi Yossi. So the answer is chadav coming in both reasons. Chad in the keva plus, because even if the baby's in the keva, she also prevents them from eating because she has a share in it, right? That's what, as we said before. If you have boys and we said if there's boys and an uber, so Rabbi Yossi said, what did we say? Rabbi Yossi said if there's boys and an uber, they can't eat because of chelik uber. Rabbi Shimon Yochai says, wait a minute, no. If there's boys and an uber, they could eat. That some Basel could eat. Why? Because the uber is either going to be a girl. There's a chance that it's going to be a girl, and there's a chance that even if it's a boy, it will be a miscarriage, right? It'll be a stillborn, or won't survive, won't be viable. So the odds are that you go with the odds that the baby will not inherit anything. That's what Shimon Yochai says. And if all the children are girls, or it's one girl or 10 girls, but all there is left over girls, then the baby cannot eat because either it's going to be a girl, and if it's going to be a boy, the girls get nothing. And if it's a girl, she has a share in it. So it's and then the girls won't have anything. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Let's understand this from Shimon Yochai. Shimon Yochai is going with the same idea as Rabbi Yossi, that the baby has a share. But the problem is, so if baby has a share, what about the share of the uber? We're going according to Rabbi Yossi, not according to Rabban. Remember we said before, Zudivrei Rabbi Yossi, but the Chacham say baby has no share. But if you hold that the baby has a share, like Rabbi Yossi and like his son, and like Rabbi Shimon Yochai also, the baby has a share. So if there's boys, or one boy or 10 boys, the Avdei Tzom Basel could eat. Why? What about the share of the baby? So the answer is, we're not worried about the miyut. Because as I said before, the odds are that there will not be a live, viable baby boy from this pregnancy. 50% are girls, and if there's a boy, since there's boys who are already alive, the girls will get nothing. And the other chance is that there's a small chance, 2%, 5%, that the baby won't survive. So we're not worried about the miyut. Or we are concerned about the miyut, but the Avdin Takanta Rav Nachman, even though we said that the baby has a share, but there's a way to take care of that share. Why? We make a takana like Chacham. In other words, what do we do? Let's say there are 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds. A man leaves over 10 children. He's got boys who are 20, 25, already in business, married with beards, and he's got the little children, 3, 5. What do you do with the children? How are the 3 and 5-year-olds and 9-year-olds going to, share in the Yerusha with the older brothers? The answer is Bezin sets up a guardianship for them. So he says the same thing. If they come to split up the shares of their fathers, Bezin sets up a guardian for them, and the guardian acts in the best interest of each child, each child's guardian. Higdilu, once they got older, and they're not happy with the guardian did for them, they can appeal that. They can appeal that. Rav Nachman himself said, not Rav Nachman or Shmuel, Rav Nachman himself said, once they grow older, they can't appeal it. What's the power of the guardian if they can appeal it later on? So there's a shiloh whether they can appeal it. But the point is that Bezin sets up a guardian for the young children, and that guardian could also be a guardian on behalf of the unborn child. So if there's a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old boy contesting the will or fighting over the Yerusha, who's going to get what, with the 25-year-old son, with his brothers, right? Just like they could do it, Bezin will set up a guardian for the unborn baby also. So that's what we're saying over here. Even though, yes, we are worried about, there is a concern about the unborn child. The unborn child has a share in it. You're right, but so we'll act on behalf of the unborn child. Rav Nachman says, so if the unborn child has a share in the slaves, fine. So we'll act on their behalf. So how is he going to, but he still can't give them to, so it's very simple. So Rashi explains like this. We act on behalf of the unborn child, and they'll say, look, okay, you brothers who are already alive, you take the slaves, we'll take the cash. We'll take the cash, we'll take the house or whatever. You split it up that way. Rashi explains that. Rashi in the third line from the top of the page. So the vadim will all go to the people who are born already, to the brothers who are born, and the unborn child will get other assets, stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, whatever. But if they're all in the kavas, that's not a solution. Why? Because if the baby is a boy, he gets everything. The girls get nothing, right? And if it's all his, as we said before, an unborn child cannot cause the avadim, can't give food to the avadim. Unborn child, yulid machal, she'ena lid, ena machal. He can't give food to them. Or right, or whether you learn the other reason is because he's a zar, because he's not a Kohen. Either because unborn child is not a Kohen and he can't give him food, or because yulid machal, she'ena machal. So that's what and he has a share in it. Again, if you hold like the Rabbana, not like Rabbi Yossi, the unborn child has no share. That's different. They're all differently. We don't care if there's children or not children. Doesn't make it. He has no share in it whatsoever. The avadim can eat because of the share of the other brothers, because of the brothers of the father who died, or because of his family. Fine. But according to Yossi, that the child has a share in it and he can't give food. So what's the solution? If there's a baby, if there's an unborn child, they can't eat because of the unborn child's share. So Rav Shapiro says no, they could. Why? Because we're not worried about the unborn child's shares, because it's not probably going to. If there's a boy already alive, then we're not worried about, because it's there's only a small chance, it's a minority chance that there'll be another baby boy here. Or even if it is a baby boy, we are concerned that there'll be a baby boy, but we assign him an apotropos and we give him other assets, not the cut. So if that's the case, that's the Gemara Lamed Rav Nachman Tanoi. Okay, that's what Rav Shimon says, right? But the other one doesn't hold that way. The Tanakama, Rabbi Yossi didn't say. Tanakama said, "Oh, if there's a baby boy, if there's an unborn child, the slaves cannot eat." Like we saw in the Mishnah, we saw in the Brisa. Why not? What about giving him the shares? What about assigning him a share, like the Apotropos giving him the real estate and the other assets, not the Kohen? So maybe it's a machlokas. Do we do such a takana for the children? Lamed Rav Nachman Tanoi says, "Look, the kulam is sort of everybody else Rav Nachman. Here it's speaking where they didn't do the takana. Yes, that is an option. They cannot be trupis and assign him his assets and assign the born children, the children are already born, assign them the avadim. That could be a solution. But if they didn't do that, right? If they didn't eat David Takana, everybody would agree. But if they didn't do that takana, they didn't make that takana, whatever. There was no beznir. They didn't have to be trupis. So there, Rav Shimon Yochai says they can eat. He's not worried about the miyat. He's not worried about the miyat because the odds are that the unborn child will either not be viable or will be a girl. And therefore, if there's born sons, the slaves will go to those sons, and therefore they could eat. Rabbi Shmuel, right? As we said, now we're going to come. So that's what the issue is over here. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi is worried about the chance of the unborn child, and he can't give eat, and he's worried about the miyat. And Rabbi Shimon Yochai is not worried about the miyat, and therefore he says if there's a born son, the kids could eat even if there's a pregnant wife. Now we're going to go back to Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi's son Rabbi Shmuel said, "Abbas macheles, if there's a daughter, if a daughter could give food and a son cannot." What does that mean? What does it mean a daughter could and a son cannot? So now we're analyzing it. It's like Omer Mar. Rabbi Shmuel Yossi said what? Rabbi Shmuel Yossi says, Rabbi Shmuel Yossi says in the name of his father, Mishum Aviv, Habas Machla Ben Enamach. Why can't a son give food? Because the share is, if there's a born son and an unborn child, the born son cannot give food because of the chelik of the ober. Rabbi Yossi holds that the ober has a chelik. So the same thing, even if there's a daughter alive now, she can give food. That can't give. It's true that she's going to be the owner if there's no other children, and her mother could eat because of her because she is a child of the Kohen. But what about the chelik of the ober? The chelik of the ober is a problem whether the born child is a son or a girl. We're talking about a weird case where there are very little assets who could go dika ben b'haribas. The girl's not here alone. There's also a boy and a girl. The rule is if there's a boy and a girl, who gets the Yerusha? Only the son. However, the rabbi said if there's only a small estate, give it to the girls and let the boys go begging because girls couldn't work in those days. Okay, we could go dika ben b'haribas. So therefore, that's why we say they can eat because if the child is a son, lo arif mehai, he's no better than the son here now. The unborn son is not going to have any share, just like the born son's not going to have any share, right? Because when there's a small amount of assets, you give it to the girl. Ibasi, and this is the Rabban, of course. Ibasi, and if the unborn child is a girl, Amayachla, why would she eat? Why would she be able to eat? But to come to the Rabbanan, because the rabbi said if there's a small amount of assets, give it to the girls. The Rabbanan didn't make such a takana if she's not born yet. The Rabbanan only said, listen, there's a girl here and there's boys, and the girl can't work. We give it to the girl and let the boys go begging. But they didn't make a takana for such a girl.
That slaves are allowed to eat.
And therefore the slaves are allowed to eat. The slaves are allowed to eat, as we're saying right now, because she will get all the assets. The born girl will get all the assets. And what about the unborn? If it's an unborn boy, he'll get nothing anyway. He has no shit. The Rabbanan took it away.
It's quite a strange case.
Yes.
We're talking about a small amount of food that has to be shared with slaves.
Right. That's right.
I mean,
that's right. That's exactly. Small amount of food that we shared with slaves. Correct. That's correct. So Gemara says, if you're talking about a small amount of assets, what about the sefer? What about Rav Shapiro? It says that that if there's a boy, if there's a boy who's alive, they can eat because of the boy. The girls get nothing. If there's girls, no. It says if there's only girls, then the over cannot eat. Why? Because maybe the over will be a boy, and the girls will get nothing if there's a boy. What do you mean? If you're just saying it's a small amount of assets, the girls get everything. Adarab and Chasim belongs to the girls, so that doesn't make sense. You can't say that Rav Shapiro is speaking about a case where there's a small amount of assets. But he says, no, Seif Asim Chasim Rabim. You're right. That the Seif is speaking about whether Rav Shapiro is going back to the issue where there was a lot of Nechasim. When there's a lot of Nechasim, then we say if there's only girls who are alive, they cannot give the Avadim. They can't give the Avadim to eat. Why? Because the chelik of the boy. Maybe it'll be a boy. So here we're saying you're going back to the Chasim Rabim. Okay. But Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yosef, was speaking about Nechasim Muatim. Says Nechasim Muatim, the Banasa doesn't really belong to the girls. The rabbi said, take it away from the boys and give it to the girls. But it really belonged to the girls. From Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yochanan, Yisam Shekad Memachim Nechasim Muatim. If someone went and sold, even if it was Nechasim Muatim, but they sold it off, they know that the rabbis are going to say, give it to the girls and you guys go beg, and they sold it off. Masha Machur Machur, because basically they own it. So therefore, the Kiva Mashi says, it's theirs. So if it's theirs, they own it. So how could you say that the Kohanim could eat it, the slaves could eat it on their behalf? The fact is, if there's a boy and a girl who are alive, it's going to go to the boys are the ones who own it, and the unborn boy will also have a share in it. So we're back to our original problem. What does he mean there? The bas, a daughter can give to eat when there's a boy, when there's a girl, not. And if there's only and if there's boys cannot give to eat, cannot give the some barzal to eat, and the girls can. How does that make sense? If there's a boy there with them, and you want to say nechasim muatim, still the boy really owns it. My boss. What do you mean, my boss? The tiny aim. When Rabbi Yossi said a daughter gives to eat and a son doesn't, he really means the mother. And as if the mother's there, the child can eat because of the mother. And what do you mean? He's on my boss aim. Bachikamer says Rashi, the last Rashi before the Mishnah. Just like we saw in the Mishnah. If there's the Kohen dies and he left boys and girls and he left a wife, the wife's slaves, the Abdim could eat because of the mother. But the son, that's what we said before. Really what Rabbi Yossi said in the Mishnah. That's what Rabbi Yossi said in the Mishnah. That's the same as Rabbi Yossi. The answer is cool. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, Tani Law. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yossi, explained the whole thing. So basically, he's not saying that the daughter gives that daughter. We're not talking about a daughter at all. We're talking about the daughter being the mother. We're talking about the mother. A bas when we say bas, we mean bas Yisrael. So again, a Kohen dies. He left his wife, a bas Yisrael, with sons and Avdei Tzon Barzol and Avdei Tzon and Avdei Malud. Forget the business about Nechasim Moatim. That didn't make sense. So what are we saying? Again, the wife, like we said at the beginning of the Mishnah, the wife could eat because she has sons from the Kohen. Her Avodim can eat because she can eat. The Nechsei Tzon Barzol cannot eat. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi holds that the children have a share, the unborn child has a share, and he cannot cause them to, he cannot empower them to eat. Again, if there were only sons and she wasn't pregnant, then they could eat because of the sons. And if there were no sons and she's not pregnant, then she can't eat, and nobody could eat. There's nobody to eat over here, right? Who would the slaves go to? They would go to his family. Oh, so according to Rabbanan, his family then they could eat because of his family. According to everybody there, right?
What if there's an Uber?
If there's what?
An Uber in the family.
No. So an Uber cannot give to eat. I'm just saying because he has surviving relatives somewhere, brothers, a father, a cousin, whatever, and they go to him, and then they can eat because of them. But an Uber cannot cause them to eat.
So the Chachamim don't hold by the pasuk of the lit by.
Yes, they hold to the pasuk. The pasuk is pasuk Yilid Bayis Hem Yoch Bachmo, but they held that the unborn child has no share. You understand? Yilid Beiso Hem Yilid Beiso Hem Yoch Bachmo, but they have in other words, you can only give clear. Yeah, only a born child can cause them to eat. Unborn child cannot give them to eat, but the unborn child has not zochen in any way. Is not zochen in. His unborn child is not zochen until he's born. What they're saying is only when he's born can he give him to eat. Before he's born, can't give him to eat. But the question is, does he have a share in it or not? That's the issue. Does he have a share in it or not while he's unborn? Now, just like we saw that the Uber can prevent, if all there is an Uber, there are no children. The Kohen dies and there's an Uber. Can she eat truma? No, right? Because the unborn child cannot give her to eat. That applies to everybody, right? Michael, let's say there are no other sons, and let's say the other way around, she's a Bas Kohen married to Yisrael, and she wants to go back now after her husband died or divorced her and eat in her father's house. Truma, again, he prevents her from eating because maybe he's a Yisrael. Maybe he'll be a viable child. See, the Uber, whether it turns out to be a boy or a girl, would prevent her from eating truma in her father's house because now she has a child or descendants from the Yisrael. So just like the Uber prevents the Bas Kohen from eating and does not allow the Bas Yisrael to eat, the mother, same thing with the Yavam. Let's say he didn't marry her yet. The man died. Reuben died. Remember, Reuben died with no children and left brother Shimon. And let's say they're Kohanim. Can she eat truma now while she's waiting for Shimon to consummate the Yibum? Can she eat truma? No. And if she's a Bas Kohen and he's not a Kohen, also prevents her from going back. But Erison, now Erison will see his Rabbanim because Erison, if Minatorah, if the husband's a Bas Kohen and he gets engaged to the Bas Yisrael, she can eat truma. But we said Lamaisa she doesn't. The rabbis made it the Kana. We'll see why. So Uberva Yavma Erison, and the other way around. Let's say she's a Bas Kohen and he's a Yisrael, and he gets engaged to her. She can't eat truma anymore. Same thing a Chayrish. Chayrish only has a kedusha Rabbanan. So if he's a Kohen, a Chayrish, and he marries her, it's only not a kedusha darai, so he can't give her to eat truma. And if she's a Bas Kohen, he prevents her from eating truma. Uben Teisha Shanim Yom Echad, and a 9-year-old boy who's 9 years old, postum mechilim, because his bia is considered a bia. All these people prevent and deprive a Bas Kohen from eating, but they can't cause her to eat. Suffolk Shuben Teisha Shanim Yom Echad Suffolk Shem. Let's say we're not sure if he's 9 years old or not. Or Suffolk or even if he's 13 years old, but in order to be bar mitzvah, you have to have both simonim and shanim. You have to be both 13 years old and have pubic hair. let's say he's 13 years old, but we're not sure if he has pubic hair, or so in these cases, we're talking about cases where we go the chumrah and she doesn't. So here we bring up a case from the first few prakim, right? In the case where a man was married to his niece, right? Reuven was married to Shimon's daughter. Remember the first beginning of the Masechah? Think about it again, right? I see the troubled look. Reuven was married to Shimon's daughter, right? And he had another wife, Sarah the Tzara, right? Another wife. Now, if he dies with no children and he left these two wives, does Sarah have Yibum or Chalitza? No. Well, according to Beis Shammai, yeah, but basically we all know, right? Just like Shimon can't marry his daughter, right? That's one of the 15 cases. The first case is his daughter, because he falls even to Shimon. Who does Shimon have Yibum with now? His daughter and her Tzara. Just like he can't have Yibum on the Tzara, on the daughter, he can't have Yibum on the Tzara. However, let's say his daughter died first. Kulin Shemesu, let's say the daughter died first. And now when Reuben dies, all he left was Sarah the Tzara. Then there is Yibum. But we're not sure who died first. The house fell down and killed Reuben and Shimon's daughter, his wife Shimon's daughter. We're not sure who died first. So in that case, what does Sarah do? Chalitza, because we're not sure she can't do Yibum, because maybe it's a Shachash Lod Marka Mitzvah, because maybe the daughter survived Reuven, and right, Shimon's daughter maybe survived Reuven, so therefore both women fell Yibum, and since Shimon can't marry his daughter, he can't marry the Sarah either. So this is only brought down because it's another case of a chumrah, like a suffix is ben teisha shon yom echad, suffix shein is we're not sure. So therefore we say that you do chalitza, not Yibum. Rashi says suffix ben teisha hanamik ben teisha uposel but milsa le'el koi, right? Suffix shed v'eshas le'el koi le'inyan ha'erison the tani posen v'chakamar cotton shekira sheisha suffix heavy sheisaras v'kiddush kedushin suffix shalav posel baskoin and rest of them on the throne. So the suffix ben teisha, suffix if he's bar mitzvah or not, right? Or suffix if he's 9 years old or not, right? So the suffix if he's 9, the suffix shu ben teisha, suffix again is a question. I make a ben teisha posel. We're not sure if he's a ben teisha apostle for eating truma, or if his suffix ben shavas is a question of whether his kedushin was a good kedushin or not. He's going on the Eirson, the Tani post and Vachakam, cotton shekidusha isha, and we're not sure if he was kedushin was a kedushin or not. Suffix loevi, shavik loevi, post of baskon and rest of them at a truma, because it's a suffix. You always go l'chumra. The last case is a question of tzoras choletz lo nisabetz. The first case we're talking about, does he passel or not? He passel it because it's a suffix. So you're talking about where you go l'chumra. The last case we had in the first prakim, but it's only brought down because it's another case where we go l'chumra. I be suffix l'chumra. How do we make this one too? So the Gemara now just explains. So Uber, Ibas Kohen Yisrael. If we're talking about Ibas Kohen Yisraeli pasula, why does he pasula? She can't go back in her father's house anymore because it says kinurea v'shava el beisavia kinurea, as in her youth, prat muberis. She wasn't when she was a Nara, she wasn't muberis in her father's house. Muberis, she doesn't eat truma. Ibas Yisrael Kohen. Lo machel, if she's a bas kohen, he can't give her the truma. You lid machel, sheni lid machel. Everybody holds of that, right? Only a kid's born. He can't. So if he's a kohen and she's the Israel, and he died and left her pregnant, she can't eat truma because only if he's born can he give her truma, not others. Yavam, ibas kohen Israel pasula because it says shavel base of via prat the sheberes yavam. Right, she's Bas Kohen. She's a Shemeres Yavim. She's not going back to her father's house yet. She's a Shemeres Yavim, so she can't eat truma in her father's house. Bas Yisrael Kohen lo machalo. Why Kinyan Kaspam Rachmana? Why Kinyan Dachavu? Why don't you say it's also Kinyan Kaspam? Pasuk says in Yudal, in Perikopes, Pasuk Yudal says if Kinyan Kaspo, if a Kohen Kinyan Kaspo, who Yochel, right? Nefesh who Yochel. So only if he acquires her, but here he didn't acquire her. He's a Kinyan. He's a Kinyan of not of Shimon. He's a Kinyan of Reuven, the brother who died, and therefore she can't eat truma yet. By Erison, what about Erison? Ibas Kohen Yisrael. If Yisrael's Ma'aris Ibas Kohen Pasala, right? The Kanya Babai. He acquired her, so now she is acquired to the Israel, and therefore she cannot eat. Bas Kohen Pasas Pas Kohen Kisiya Leish Zar, right? Right. So if she's a Kohen Zar, she can't eat anymore. She can't eat truma. Ibas Yisrael Kohen. If she's a Bas Yisrael to Kohen, technically she could eat truma as soon as he gets engaged to her, as soon as Erison, even though then it didn't consummate marriage to. lo machal, why? Mishum de ula, because ula says she might give it to her brothers. There's another svar over there in Ksubas also. We're going to see Ksubas in Hashem soon, right? Another svar in Ksubas is why? Because simple, because we're afraid that he might, when he consummates the marriage later on, he might find when he undresses her, he might find out that she has some blemish, and he'll claim mekachtos, and he didn't mean to marry her, and the marriage was no marriage, and then she ate truma and she was a zara, she wasn't entitled to. Other reason, but basically the reason because of ula, because we're afraid she might give it to her brother. So therefore, technically a bas Yisrael who's engaged to a kohen could eat truma, but the rabbi said don't eat truma. At least wait for a year until he assigns her own house, so she won't give it to her brothers, or because of the reason of simple. All right, tomorrow's daf is daf Safches on the that'll be on the podcast, and on Sunday, Mitzvah Hashem, we'll start at the top of daf Samach Tes. I had it marked somewhere. I forgot exactly where. Okay, so we'll start with daf Samach Tes on Sunday. Shabbat Shalom to everybody.
Technically, a Yevama is never kiyut.